Well, welcome everyone to our third Zoom meeting of the 2022-2023 basketball season. Yeah, thanks for joining us a little bit later than we had hoped. We had to go with a little bit later start due to another Zoom meeting tonight for a few of us. But anyways, tonight's topic, legal guarding position, screening principles, and we'll talk a little bit about the restricted arc. What Eric Rain is going to lead the charge. I know we have MJ on that will help support. I will support as well. You throw your questions in the chat if you could. You can always unmute as well, and we can talk about it. And we've got 20 minutes or so at the end where we'll do some Q&A. And I did have two rules questions sent to me in the last 24 hours. So Eric and I have chatted through those already, and we'll get to those at the end. So without further ado, Mr. Rain, take it over, please.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm gonna start with a little share screen here, and we'll go through a quick PowerPoint on legal guarding position and screens. All right. So legal guarding position, we need to define it and why. Rule 423 kind of goes through legal guarding position and how to establish and maintain. It's the act of legally placing the body in the path of an offensive opponent. No minimum distance is required with the ball. Every player is entitled to a spot on the playing court, provided they get there first without illegally contacting their opponent. A player who extends arm, shoulder, hip, or leg into the path of opponent is not considered to have a legal position if contact occurs. So there's a bunch of legal language for you. In the real world, we kind of break that down as to, did they establish legal guarding position first? And did they do it with their arms in a verticality position and not extended arm bars or hand checks or place two hands and all that stuff? So from there, all right, so how do we maintain? We have to have both feet touching the playing court and our torso facing our opponent. Pretty simple. Two criteria to obtain legal guarding position. So that means if I'm turned and my shoulder is towards the ball handler, I can be set with both feet on the floor, but my shoulder is what's facing their torso and they crash into me. I was never legally established. Once I have that both feet on the ground and torso facing the opponent, I can lift one foot, I can jump, provided I remain in a vertical plane. I'm not required to continue facing that opponent. I can move laterally and obliquely, so side to side or backwards, and I can raise my hands up above my head in a vertical plane. And it also states if there's imminent contact coming, they may duck or give themselves a leeway to absorb said contact. So two situations to think of when we're looking at how they establish their legal guarding position. The first is an opponent with the ball or stationary without the ball. There's no time and distance required for legal guarding position. As long as we get the 2 feet down and torso facing, we're good. If the opponent with the ball is airborne, we must have done that before they left the floor, i.e. no slide under. So just because when the contact occurs, it may look like the defender was set and established. If they're still sliding in while that opponent is already airborne, we would have a blocking foul and no legal guarding position. The other portion is a moving opponent without the ball. Time and distance are factors. You must give time and distance to avoid contact, no more than 2 strides at the current speed. And then once again, if the opponent is airborne already, you must have attained the legal guarding position before they left the floor. So any questions so far? Comments from anybody else?
Well, one thing, Eric, that I do, I mean, especially if it's tight play, but I will do this most nights, is I will talk to myself about legal guarding position. Meaning that I will say to myself, legal. is that their defensive position is legal, okay? That their screen is legal. So I will say that to myself. And so now if I say legal, what did they do to constitute a foul? Okay. You know, did they knee them? Did they break their verticality, etc.? So I do a self-talk, especially on tight screens, on tight defensive plays. And I just say to myself, legal, or I say not legal. So, you know, just something that I do. Thanks.
And I can add on to that too, Eric, if you want. I do the same thing. I kind of call it my mental checklist, because then it helps you as an official to make a decision rather than to react. So like Jared says, I'm talking to myself the same thing. What can that defender do in that opportunity? Legal, 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 illegal. And then that's when you're going to have a foul. So what makes it illegal? And that in turn, one helps you be a decision maker rather than a reactor, because when we react, we just sometimes are like, holy crap, what just happened? But once you make a decision, you turn around to report, or you go to the table to report, you're over standing by the coach and the coach said what they do, and you go, well, this is what they did. This is what made that move illegal, or made that guarding illegal. And then the coach is like, oh, okay. So again, that way it helps you explain it as well, rather than, well, I don't know, it just kind of looked funny. Okay, so if you can be a decision maker rather than a reactor, it's also going to help you in the next stage when a coach asks you what they did.
So that kind of leads into, why is it important that we know if a player has legal guarding position? Because like MJ just said, that's our decision-making process. That's what we use to decide foul on the defense, foul on the offense, play on. Do we have legally established and within 6 feet for our 5-second closely guarded count? And verticality, when we jump in the air, you can't start applying that a defensive player has verticality rights if when they jump from the floor, they had an established legal guarding position. So that's a big factor in all of our plays, whether it's a perimeter closing out on a perimeter shot, a drive to the basket, a full court press where there's trying to slide in and trap them at the division line when they cross there. Every inch of the court, we're determining legal guarding position when the defense is trying to make a play on the ball handler or to stop someone from cutting open for a backdoor layup, things like that. So
I think one thing too, Eric, if I might interject here, that makes it easier to define in the open court, whether it's a press, whether it's a drive to the hoop, is when that person's legal and then when they're not. So if I'm legally guarding you and I'm 2 feet down, torso facing, and now I can move laterally or obliquely with you, I am still in legal guarding position until you get head and shoulders past me. Okay, so I have verticality, you have verticality. So once you're head and shoulders past me, now if there's any contact, the onus is on me, the defender. So that helps us make that decision really easy. Okay, so if they go, well, the offense created that contact. Well, they may have, but they were head and shoulders past. So now the defense has to yield. So that can help you make that decision more succinctly, if you will. Now, if the offense creates the contact, and again, we're coming back to verticality on the defender, and the defender has not been beaten, that makes your decision really easy. Boom, you're going player control the other direction. The other thing with verticality, remember, is it's my space all the way to the ceiling in my vertical plane. If you've got a shooter going up on the low block, they're heading up and the defender's going up with them and the defender's going straight up and coming straight down, we've got no problem. But when a defender comes, we got a shooter going up and a defender comes and goes from point A to point B, now they're out of their range of verticality. So again, we're looking at what's legal and what makes that illegal, even though they're still facing them. But if they're going from point A to point B, they've got a problem. If they're going from point A to point A, then you've got good verticality. Again, some things that help you make that decision with more foundation.
And you kind of touched on this slide with that too, with verticality. And remember, when we're talking verticality all the way to the ceiling in the cylinder, it's not with our arms drop down, spread out to the side, so we're covering a 6-foot diameter cylinder. You know, we pretty much got shoulder width, hands above the heads, or hands crossed at the chest. A lot of times, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but a kid or player will just stick their hand out to the side as the ball handler's going by and let the ball handler hit their extended arm, and they look at you and say, "Oh, I'm just standing there." Yes, you were standing there with your arm extended out to the side, not in a vertical plane. So that's part of verticality as well. We've kind of covered verticality here. Verticality is defined in the rule book. Legal guarding position has to be obtained to get verticality. You may rise or jump vertically within the vertical plane. Hands and arm of the defender, either on the floor or while they're airborne, can be raised above the head. And you should not penalize for leaving the floor vertically or having hands extended above the head. Now the tough part. All right, so we had the 2 criteria for establishing legal guarding position: feet on the floor, torso facing. What is incidental contact, and what constitutes a foul? Couple things to help that we've kind of already touched on too is when the ball handler dribbler is trying to make a move to the hoop, if they don't get the head and shoulders past and they keep dribbling into the defense, there's going to be contact. Who's creating the contact? Is it the ball handler dribbler, or is it the defender with all of a sudden they pop an extended arm bar to control and steer that ball handler? Someone cutting across the lane and a help defender standing there. Are they just standing there and the offensive player who's cutting runs into them, or do they take a last second step forward to chuck the cutter and now we have a blocking foul off ball? Rebounding, same thing. If we all had a dime for every time we heard the phrase "over the back" yelled during rebounding action, we'd all be millionaires. Is the person on the back side of the rebound jumping in their vertical plane and the inside person backing up into them because it's a long rebound, or are we jumping forward and reaching over top and creating illegal contact from behind to reach for the ball that's on the front side? Things there that we look for when we are ruling foul or incidental contact. And then post play, are we using a knee and an arm bar in the back to chuck the offensive player forward? Are we on offense wrapping our hands behind and backing them down to get better position closer to the basket? Who's doing the illegal contact and making the play illegal? So any questions on anything there, or comments to add?
I might just add one there, Eric, what you talked about there with the illegal contact in the post. It's easy to referee, if you will, the rebounds. It's not so easy sometimes to train yourself to look at that pre-rebound positioning before people go up. Jared and Eric and I have worked at this for a while. I think Royce is on here as well, some other veterans, Doug, where you're watching now the players jockey for position prior to that rebound. And you'll see somebody maybe put a hand on a shoulder and go up with the other hand. So they're holding somebody down, or hook up underneath. And then when they go up for the rebound, they're pulling that other arm with them. They're trying to draw that foul. So some things to make sure that you're judging the legality of whoever's doing the rebound from before the time they leave the floor. Something to think about there as well. It's not just everything that's up in the air. So taking a look at that, was there a push in the back? And then the player gets the rebound because the coach will say, how can you call a foul on them? They got the rebound. And you're like, well, the reason that they're wide open is because they push somebody else out of the way in the first place. So seeing those things ahead of time, sometimes training yourself to watch that, it can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge.
And another one with that is always the big swim move. They go from behind someone to in front of them really quick. And you see the person, they pull the swim move on laying on the floor because they just got yanked backwards by the back of their jersey. So
But one thing, Eric, too, that I'll throw in here, you know, from a rebounding officiating, is that positioning is so critical of the 3 officials or the 2 officials. And we cannot have the center or the trail, or if it's 2-person, the trail only, bailing out. We need to stay and help, because the rebounding fouls most of the time are going to come from the out officials, not so much from the lead. Now, the lead can make a rebounding foul call, but it's going to probably happen more from the C and the T. So our basic positioning on reboundings is that the C is going to be free throw line extended and going to be on the out of bounds line, if not standing out of bounds, to have a wide field of vision. Your trail is going to be at the 28-foot mark, maybe even a step below, but they're going to be standing out of bounds or at the out of bounds line to have a wide field of vision. Your lead is going to back off of close down position. So they're not going to be directly right next to the lane line. They're going to be a step or 2 wider than that. Once again, trying to open up your field of vision. So I sometimes think that we as crews, as individuals, we get rebounding fouls wrong because we're not in proper position to see what we need to see. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And then another thing with that too is I had a game last week and we had a triple whistle, and those happen. But the biggest problem we have too, and we need to remember when we're working these games in 2-person and in 3-person, 2-person especially, is if the ball's not in our primary, you catch those pre-rebounding fouls that MJ and Jared were talking about when you're watching off ball. If we got a 2-person or a 3-person crew and everybody's watching the ball, that's when we're going to miss those bumps and chucks and swim moves and stuff, is because we're not watching our primary and we're trying to quote unquote help our partner with the play on the ball too much. And it makes it a lot easier to get those and keep the off ball stuff clean if we're doing work in our primary and letting our partners handle theirs. So we've kind of touched on all these too. First question on our decision make process: did they establish and maintain, or did they establish legal guarding position and verticality? If yes, then did they maintain it? Did they stay vertical? Did they move laterally and obliquely with the ball handler? Did they have both feet on the floor before they were airborne? Their hips. I've had a couple of these this year where they do a good job of getting legal guarding position. They get the hands in the air. Offensive player does the little Euro step around them to go up for the layup, and they do just a slight hip check to throw them off balance, and they finish the play vertical and straight up again. But that hip check threw the shooter off, and you got to get that foul. So make sure they're maintaining their verticality and not doing that little hip bump as they go by. That can really disrupt a play. So arc rule, it's hard, it's difficult, but in reality, the thought process behind it is simple. It's, if you have an arc play and you call a block and point the floor for the arc, you're saying it must meet these 2 criteria. It was the secondary defender, meaning they weren't the primary defender on the ball handler, and that they did establish legal guarding position, but they established it inside the restricted arc. So that is when you would call block and point the floor for an arc play. If it doesn't meet either of those criteria, you're just officiating a normal block charge play like you've done before the arc was brought to Minnesota. I think sometimes we overthink it a little too much because we're trying to pick up feet and we're doing all this. But just remember, those are the two things, secondary, and they established while in the arc. If they established outside the arc, then they can backpedal into it and still get a player control foul on the offense. And then the last thing here is it must be outnumbering on a fast break. So if we're in a one-on-one situation, clearly one-on-one, that defender is a primary defender and there's no arc play involved. It's just a straight up block charge when that play gets to the hoop. If we have two offensive and one defensive, now they need to establish outside the arc before they make any contact or absorb any contact from the offense. So things to think about there. Jared, MJ, any thoughts?
Yeah, and I got a couple here. So we as officials get ourselves into trouble when we're using, when we make a call and we use a wrong mechanic. Okay, so if you go back up to the two criteria that he has outlined there. So I'm gonna blow my whistle, and if I just call a block, meaning that I'm not pointing, I'm calling a block, I am saying that this secondary defender, I'm thinking secondary defender, was never legally established. If I just go a block, a straight up block. If I come with a block and a point, I'm saying that that defender is legal. However, because of their location, it's got to be a block because they are inside the arc. So we need to be careful when we use a point, when we don't use a point, because if I go block and point, I'm telling my crew that I've got a legal defender, but because they're in the arc, this is a block. Now, if my crew comes in and says, hey, you're wrong, JB, those feet were outside, I got to change it right then. Okay. Here, just 1 second. I'm sorry about that. My kids were talking. They're not now. So if I come with a straight up block and I don't point at the arc, okay, my crewmates are going to stay out of there. Well, Eric, MJ.
Yep, I totally agree. And I'll be honest with you, if you have any small doubt in your mind and that person is on the line or in the arc, call the block and point, because then your crew can help you. They can come and help you change it. I did that a couple of weeks ago. In my opinion, the player was in the arc, but I got kind of a late look at it. I called the charge, out of the arc, I called the charge. I looked at both my partners and said, do you have anything different? And they said no. And I knew it was a secondary defender. But sometimes things happen. Like Eric said, this is a tough play. It's simple, but it's tough because there's a lot going on in a small space. But if you punch it or you call the block and point to the arc, your crewmates can help you. If you just call it a straight up block, like Jared was talking about before, then nobody can help you. Then we're going to live and die with that call. The other thing that I would add to this is, remember, if that defender is in the arc, they can go vertical as long as they're in the air, okay, and still be legal. So even though if they establish in the arc, the play comes in, they jump, and there's contact, as long as they're in their vertical plane and off the floor, that's a legal play.
Yeah. One other thing that I had one of my games, it moved on me. One of my games over the holiday break, I was with, I don't think they're on here, but I was with Eric Kittleson and Dave Timmons, and we had a play, and it was a Wisconsin team playing a Minnesota team. So the Wisconsin team was really taken back on what the arc rules were. But we had an arc play, and I was the trail well away from the play coming up the court. Well, not well away, coming up the court, but it was between Dave and Eric, and they got together and were talking, and I couldn't really tell what the conversation was about. And they were trying to determine if it was fast break or not. I think sometimes we get confused between fast break and transition. Fast break is there's a quick turnover and we're going 2-on-1, 3-on-2, and half or more of the players are still trailing the play behind the front court. This play there was 7 players in the front court, and kind of that secondary break where they push the ball up to the wing and then they do a dribble drive attack and kick for threes and looking at things like that. If you have 6 or 7, 8 players in the front court involved inside the 3-point line, you're just strictly looking for secondary defender and primary defender. We're not trying to count bodies when 75% of the players are in the front court involved in the play. When they say a fast break play that is outnumbering, they're talking 2-on-1, 3-on-2. What they don't want is an offensive player going 1-on-2 and using Mark to barrel in and create contact in that play. But I don't think they're expecting us to count if it's 4-on-3 after the ball's been in the front court for 5 seconds and they've made a couple of passes. So screens tie into legal guarding position as well. Just think of it as the screener needs to establish legally on their spot before contact occurs with the person they're trying to screen. The only difference is, you see their bullet point 3, they can face any direction. You don't have to have your torso facing the person you're trying to screen. You just have to have both feet on the floor and be stationary. I think it's rule 440. It goes over what screens are and the different scenarios there. Is it a stationary opponent? Is it a moving opponent? Is it in or out of the visual field of the person you're trying to screen? And some of our quiz questions go through that as well and break those down, those different situations. But just know the different rules. If it's a stationary opponent and you're outside the visual field, you need to give them one step to be able to avoid contact. So I can't run straight up to the backside and stop 1 inch short of contact and be a legal screen. I need to give them enough space to get around me. If it's a moving opponent, depending on how fast they're moving, it's 1 to 2 strides before contact, and they need to be able to move around that if they're outside the visual field. If you're in the visual field, pretty much you need to be stopped and set short of contact. You can initiate the contact, but if they can see you coming, you need to be stopped just short of contact. The only exception there at the bottom is if basically I always think of it as if it's a game of tag, the person in front running the same direction as the person chasing them, there's no time and distance. If the defense is chasing someone and the person in front stops and they crash into the back, it's on the person behind them. So, and then the last part there, must stay in the vertical plane, and they can be no more than shoulder width apart. So if we have someone, we've all seen these where they're setting the screen and they got their feet spread as far as they can get, and that opponent goes by and the only thing that sets the screen is that extended leg, that's an illegal screen. If that defender goes straight into the torso, straight into the chest of the person setting the screen, I'm going to call that a legal screen because the illegal leg isn't what set the screen. It was the torso of the body. But if I've got my leg extended out and the leg is the only thing that sets the screen, we should be calling a player control foul, team control foul, and going the other way.
But thanks, Eric. One thing that I do is I will coach kids up for their screening principles. If the screens are starting to get a little bit shaky, I mean, we're stepping in on free throws, I will coach them up. We got to get our screens set. We got to get them set. We can't be moving. You got to keep your arms in place. You can't have your legs wide. So don't be afraid to have a little bit of preventative officiating if you can. If that doesn't work and you got to blow the whistle, boom, I'll blow the whistle. And now one of the best things with your game is if you get an illegal screen early on one end, if you can get an illegal screen on the other end of the floor, it's going to clean up your game so quickly that you're going to thank yourself at the end of the game. So what off-ball calls really work, folks. Thanks.
Yeah. So in summary, we need the
Oh, hang on,
official. Whoop,
Can
go
I
for it.
add something to it?
Yep.
First of all, I'll answer Paul's question. Paul Krolick had a question. If the defender has to go around a wide or illegal screen and avoids contact, what do you have? You have nothing, because there's no contact. So, you know, that's where I've said something to a coach where coach is like, you know, saying, MJ, that's an illegal screen. Coach, I agree. Well, why don't you call it? I said, well, there's nothing really illegal about it until we have contact. So you mean I have to run into the screen? I have to tell my player to run into the screen? Yeah, you have to run into, like Eric said, with these wide feet, you have to run into the part that's illegal. If you just run into the torso, I've got nothing. So again, sometimes, like Jared talked about coaching up the player, sometimes you got to coach up the coach too. Okay, because just because they got their feet super wide, yes, my antennas go up. That is technically an illegal screen if somebody runs into that leg, but it's not if they run into their torso. So knowing, again, that's our mental checklist of what's legal and what's not. I'd like to just talk a couple minutes, if it's okay, Eric, about a couple situations on those screens.
Yep.
So, okay, so, and Jared and Eric, join in here any point in time. The ones that get us in trouble, the straight up screens out in the open court, I think we're all pretty good at those, and they're easy to see. You can see the legality of the screener, okay? And some of them can be bone crushing if somebody doesn't call it out for that, the screen E, okay? But as long as that screen's legal out in the open court, play on. There's a couple of different ones where we have to kind of make some decisions. The big one I see is the handoff out on the perimeter. You got ball handler, dribbler moving one way. You got the screen coming up, set to them. The defender gets smoked into the screen, but then they're handing the ball off at the flip side. So technically what's going to happen is the ball handler, dribbler is handing off the ball to the other player and now setting the screen. So that's a tough one to watch, because if that ball handler, dribbler, now screener, takes one more step into that defender, they've just set an illegal screen. So again, for teams to do that legally, they have to be very good at making sure when they stop and hand that ball off, so that they're stopped in a legal position before they set that screen. So that's something to talk about with your crew. The other one, because it takes a couple of officials to make that call. It takes your trail and your C on the perimeter to make that call and see that whole play. The other one is where they come up on the high post. They do that entry pass. They pass the ball back out. They set the ball handler, dribbler runs by them, and then they roll and they put their arms out. Okay, so whoops, I banged into something on my shelf here. So when they roll, are they making a roll and they're putting their arm up to ask for the ball and that little give and go going to the hoop? Or are they putting their arms out and trying to hold that defender back? So that's something else that we have to look at. And whoever's in the primary there, the off official has to help with that, because sometimes, again, there's a lot going on in that small space. Now, if they're just rolling towards the hoop, and like Eric talked about earlier, we're all moving in the same direction, we got nothing. Okay, but when you start to see those hands come down and wrap, or you see that little swim, right? And then they're asking for the ball as they go, that's where we have to get that foul, because they're holding that defender. And the other one is on the low block. I see this because coaches teach offensive players to seal their defender. So they'll be down on the low block, and that drive will come from the baseline, or maybe from kind of the wide perimeter, and they'll come down, and that post player will come out. And as that ball handler, dribbler comes by them, they'll go just like this, you know, so they kind of seal that defender out. If they do it legally, we got nothing. But if they got hands wrapped back around, or they got their arms out, or they got their elbows back and they're pulling, or they're displacing, because now we're using that other word, boom, that's an illegal screen. And the coach will say, they were wide open. I said, the reason they're wide open is because your low post moved their defender 4 feet out of the way and opened up that alley. So again, off ball stuff is where we can pick up a lot of those illegal screens. So just wanted to add that, because out in the open court ones, those are easy. Those three, those are the hard ones.
Well, so one thing to piggyback here that I've seen this year is that sometimes we never set the screen. They're going to set the screen and they never set it, and then they roll right through it, and then they take that defender out. Okay, that's an illegal screen. They have to set first. Now, if we roll and if we pin that defender, and like MJ says, we're showing our arms for the ball, our hands for the ball, okay, now that's a legal play. But if they never set the screen and then they roll and they're trying to take out that defender, it's an illegal screen. So I talked through screens on that. That was a legal set. Now the roll, okay, that's a legal play. Or that was not a set. Now they're rolling. Oh, okay, there was no contact. That was just ugly, but there's no call there. So, just something to think about. Is that screen actually being set or is it not being set? Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully I do have some illegal screen clips. Hopefully it will work to show on this. I know last time I tried to show clips on the Zoom meeting, it got grainy for everybody but me. So, but yeah. So last thing here, obviously we've thrown out a bunch of rule book language and decision-making process. We need to have the rule book knowledge and what it says. Torso down, torso facing 2 feet down to establish legal. Hands above the head for vertical. On our arc plays, the language says if they're in the arc but they jump in the air, if they legally established and then jump in the air, it doesn't matter that they were in the arc on our arc plays and things like that. For new officials, the rule book can be daunting and it's long and there's information everywhere. My advice, start in Rule 4. It defines a lot of the things that you need to look for to establish legal guarding position, legal screens, legal guarding, what you can do with your hands, what you can't do with your hands. The rest of the rule book is 9 and 10 are based off of Rule 4. When they don't meet the definition of the legal plays, it tells you what the penalty is for not doing those. And most of the time we know it's out of bounds, nearest point, the point of the violation or near the spot of the foul. But Rule 4 is a good place to start because it gives you the definition and terms you need to make these decisions on what's illegal and what's legal contact on the playing court. So we'll see if I can get some clips to work. Whoops, sorry. Is this sharing to everybody?
Yes, we can see your files here. You're on defense maintains.
Okay, so that is what the problem is. Okay. So that's not sharing. Here we go. So if you follow if you can see my arrow, ball handler has it top of the key. Do we have legal guarding position by the primary defender?
Yes.
Yep. 2 feet down, torso facing, hands are above in a vertical plane. Gets above the screen. Do we still have legal guarding position? 2 feet down, we're moving laterally and obliquely. Offensive players' head and shoulders are not past the torso yet. Did we ever lose legal guarding position? No. Offensive player initiated the contact, kept going into the torso of the defensive player. You could see both hands were shown. When they went up for the shot, we put a hand up, tipped the shot attempt, and our teammate grabbed the rebound. So if we break verticality, if our offense gets our head and shoulders pass and then we're dragging with the hips onto the legs of the offensive player, then we come in with a blocking foul or a arm bar or something of that nature, but we'll play it all full live speed one more time. But just the defense does a good job of establishing and maintaining their position.
They're all that way. They wouldn't need us, Eric.
Exactly. All right. So here's where we kind of break verticality. So we're going to have a drive to the basket. Secondary defender is going to slide over to help to contest the shot. And you see that arm drop down and catch the top of the head of the offensive player. From a high school rules perspective, we are in the arc on this play, but we jump in the air. And if we don't drop the arm down, we did a pretty good job of staying vertical, except for that left arm coming out and clubbing them. So if the defense doesn't do that, they got legally established 2 feet on the floor, torso facing. As far as arc rules, they jumped in the air, but when we broke verticality, we get the foul. Thoughts, questions?
So that one was a little tough just because it's so herky-jerky, Eric, but I think we understand what you're getting at.
Let's go to this is going to be an arc play. So ball's in the low post in front of lead. They're going to kick to the wing. And then there's going to be a play at the hoop. Everybody catch it. So is our secondary defender feet down, torso facing? Yep. But you can see clearly in the arc. And as we move forward, clearly contact. And then trail comes in and gets the call. This might be an odd one for center and lead because they're straight line. Lead's looking through a lot of backs. Center had the drive with a primary defender chasing from behind, and it kind of opened up to the trail on there, but you can see clearly an arc play.
Yep, right, but the whistle should be coming from lead, but lead's got to see this. I mean, they got to adjust, they got to pinch harder. I mean, they're responsible for that secondary. They got to own the paint on that. That's a nice pickup by Trail, but I would like to have my lead involved. So
I think that crew would have liked to have the lead make that call as well. I'm pretty sure.
And then that call right there, that play, I don't care if it's a high school game or if it's a college game, we got to have a whistle on that. We cannot have a train wreck and not have a whistle because we are 100% wrong. And we could kick the heck out of the arc, but as long as we put the whistle on it, okay, the worst thing that's going to happen is that we're going to be 50% wrong. But I mean, that play needs a whistle.
Correct.
In that situation where the play actually went from trail to C, if you will, on that C drive, that's something as the lead, and we all work on this, is to try to pick up that secondary defender. As soon as that play goes to the C, and I look at that setup and I go, okay, whether I have time to get over there or not, they start to drive right away. I don't have time to go. The only thing I can do at that point is pinch and help with a secondary defender. Because I'm not very good if I'm flying over to the other side, trying to find my secondary defender, et cetera. So just do what you're good at right there. Just stay right there, pinch into the paint, like Jared was saying, find your secondary defender and help with that play. If nothing else, we go right back to what we talked about before. You're calling a charge or you're calling an arc block, and then your partners can come in and help you. So I agree.
Hey, I got a question. Kevin Sulfurs here. Jared and MJ and Eric, don't you think the C on that play was a little high? They should have been a little lower. I mean, wouldn't you want to pinch that in when your lead is on the opposite side like that?
I think Kevin, I think they were a little high, but sometimes too, you know, we move just to get a better angle on a certain play, and you might have moved to get an angle on the previous play, you know, and then when we take them in still shots like that, we sometimes end up looking like we're in bad position, but at game speed, it doesn't always feel that way.
Sure.
Somebody else asked a question too. Hang on, let me come back. Can the C take that arc play in their primary? Should you wait a heartbeat for the lead? I would wait a heartbeat for the lead, but absolutely go ahead and take it if they don't have it. Wouldn't you agree, Eric, Jared, Royce?
Yes. I want to give my lead the crack there. I want to have the cadence whistle. So like you say, the heartbeat, Matt. However, okay, let's flip this play around. We got a one-on-one drive coming from C, primary defender all the way to the bucket, and there is no secondary help. I want my center to take that. My center is going to have the primary whistle because it's a primary defender coming from their area. The lead then would have the cadence whistle or the heartbeat whistle, as you talk about. That's a great pregame topic, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, and they've said it in all the training videos from Nickleby is secondary defenders in the paint. They want the primary whistle coming from the lead. So whether it's a drive from center, a drive from trail, if it's a secondary defender involved in an arc play, they want the lead to own those plays. They want the lead to own a pass crash. If they kick it out to a wing or drop it to the other side of the post, they want the lead to own those pass crash plays as well. So, but like you said earlier, Jared, the main thing is by the end of that play, somebody needs to have a whistle on it, and I don't care where it came from. We have to have a decision on who's at fault for those two players on the floor. So next play is not an arc play, but it's close, and you'll see here offensive player is going to give a shot fake and they're going to drive baseline. Remember, the arc stops at the backboard. So behind the backboard along the baseline, we don't have an arc. And clearly here we have the offensive player tried to get to the baseline. Defense cut them off. They couldn't get back up to it. And we have our lead correctly administrating a charge call on them. So good job there. Just one more look at it. It's a secondary defender because our primary bites on the shot fake. And we have them jumping in the air and realizing they have no plan with the ball and crashing into 32 white, and we have the player control foul. So thoughts or comments on that? That one can be a little tricky just because we tend to think it's so close to the hoop, and when the defense falls into the arc area, our brain starts thinking, oh, should we have an arc play? Are they able to take a charge there and things like that? So
My one point to make, Eric, if we have a legally established defender, okay, and now they take the contact and they're standing out of bounds, they have a foot on the line out of bounds, but they're legal, okay? By rule, that's a block because they're standing on the out of bounds line. So, just keep that in mind, that we have to have that we have to have the defenders on the playing court. They can't be standing on the out of bounds line.
Yep. We're at about 8:50 and we wanted it to keep it under an hour. And I know, Jared, you had 2 email or text questions for rules that you wanted to cover here. So we'll go over those quick. And then if there's any comments or thoughts from anybody else too. So.
Okay, but here's the first one. This was a text message that came into me today from Scott Field. So let me read it. The team is subbing offense for defense at the end of a game. The opponent has an out of bounds throw in. The inbounder steps on the line for a violation. So let's just stop right there. If I step on the line, okay, the line is still out of bounds. I need to cross my foot into the playing court. So let's just say that we have a team A violation because that foot crosses in. Can the other team now sub their offense back to the game when no time has come off the clock? So let's put players here. We have what A5 goes to the bench. A6 comes into the game. A team A is going with their throw in. There's a team A violation. And they're going to send A2 out of the game and they want to bring back A5. Can they do that? Yes or no? Anyone?
I know the answer. We had it before. So the answer is no. And if anyone wants the rule reference, you go to Rule 3, Section 3, Article 4. A player who has been replaced or directed to leave the game shall not re-enter before the next opportunity to substitute after the clock has been started properly following the player's replacement. It's one that can get easily missed. We kind of talked about how many of our table personnel keep track of which players left. Even if you have a scoreboard and a couple people at the table that are putting players who are on the floor on the sides of the scoreboard, they're not keeping track of who went off. They're worried about who's on the court now. So if you can help keep track of that, but yeah, the clock would have to properly start. So
one thing not to be confused here. So what A5 goes out, what A6 comes in, we have the violation by A. What A6 can be subbed out and they can go out of the game and we can bring in A8. We just can't bring in A5. So what A6 never played a tick of the clock because they came off the bench, but they could be subbed out. We could bring a brand new sub in. We just can't bring in A5.
Don't confuse that with live ball, dead ball, because you have a live ball there, but you don't have the clock running.
And the key is to have a tick come off the clock. Yep. The other one was by what email from Jeff Pratt yesterday. Is Jeff on today? Are you on, Jeff?
yeah, he's here.
Okay, that's what I thought. So,
I'm on.
Awesome. So
I'm learning from you guys just like everybody else.
correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff. So we got a throw in by team A, and the inbounder does not come onto the playing court right away. What is
Correct.
the call?
Yeah, that's
Correct.
exactly right. It was the situation. A's got the ball. It's on the end line, on their end, by the way, where they're going to score the basket. Not going. So they're in the front court. Ball was thrown in, threw it off to the right side beyond the 3-point line, and by the time I turned and seen the kid that caught the ball, when I turned back, the guy was still standing right beside me. He never even made an effort to enter the game to the court of play. And at first I was like, well, it's only been a second, not like it was, a long period of time. But at the same time, the word immediate doesn't, there's no real time limit there. And I'm like, okay, he's got to immediately re-enter the court. What type of violation is that? And reading the rule book, and talking to a few other officials over the weekend, because all of us had games over the weekend. I administered it as a change. What I did was wrong. I'll just tell everybody on the call. I mean, according to the rule book, it should have been a technical foul if I was going to call it, but I ended up doing it as a delay of game, and I just did a turnover of the ball, and I put a warning to the book warning on that player, and informed the coach that, hey, your player needs to immediately move in the game. Talking to a couple of officials over the weekend about it, and they said, yeah, you should have just went right to a technical on it. So Jared, I'm gonna leave it up to you to put me on the straight path here, because that's what I did. That's how I handled it. And at the time when I was doing it, I was like, I don't think that's the right procedure. So there you go.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So you did go with the tech then, or you did
I
not?
did not. No, I just did it as a warning.
Okay, so oh, I'm sorry. I was muted there for a second. I'm going to put a case play within out in the chat. So Eric and I had a good discussion about this. If the player is standing out of bounds for a second and they're slow to get back in, I'm going to use some preventative a chatter with them. Hey, get in the court. Hey, get in the court. Now, if we get going and we get a stoppage in play, I'm going to remember that number, and I'm going to go up to that number of that player and say, hey, once you throw the ball in, you need to step in bounds. Okay, but you cannot delay the entry. Okay, I'm going to work with them a little bit. If I can get the coach involved, I'm going to tell the coach as well, because most of the time what they're waiting for is they're waiting for some kind of a screen to be set, and then they're going to release off that screen. Well, that's fine. They can wait, but just step onto the court and wait. You can't be standing out of bounds. Now, this case play here that I sent out, it talks about purposefully delaying their return, and it goes into taking 4 or 5 steps along the end line prior to coming inbounds behind a screen set by A3 and A4. So they're really saying that it's a big delay. They're running out of bounds. That's when you would use technical foul. If it's a half second, if it's a second and they're still standing out of bounds, I'm going to use that prevention. What MJ? Regional coordinator. Tell us your thoughts, please.
I totally agree with what you have just said. And I'm very leery of using that tech there, especially straight out on the first opportunity. I'm doing the same thing. I'm talking to them. I'm like, get on, step on the court, step on the court. And then if you have a dead ball situation and you say to them, hey, once you throw that ball in, you've got about a heartbeat and you need to step on the floor. And usually the player goes, oh, okay. I think unless they're definitely coached to do that, I think some of them just become spectators occasionally. And just like, I'm not involved in this play. So I've never had anybody after I've told them to get on the court to delay again. So I agree. Use some preventative officiating. I mean, I guess the technical would be my last resort there, but if they're doing it knowingly, then you use your tool.
I think part of it too that you kind of touched on, to go to the technical foul earlier, Jared, you said if the defense is trying to take a charge, but their foot is out of bounds, they can't be a legal defender. And when they want the technical foul is when you're making it so the defense can't legally play defense on you and using the out of bounds area to run and get open to score a point or to get a pass. The spectator part, most of our end line throw-ins in the front court are designed to score an immediate bucket or shoot an immediate 3. So when they throw it and just stand there, they're just like you said, being a spectator and seeing if the play is going to work to get the easy bucket. But I think the technical foul piece you look for is, did they deceitfully and intentionally use the out of bounds to gain an advantage where the defense can't legally play defense on them?
I agree. Well said.
So Jeff, is that as clear as mud then?
Well, yes, and everything, I'll say that everything that you guys just discussed, I did following my warning call. But to back it up just a little bit more, when you got coaches screaming on the left side saying, he's standing out of bounds, he's standing out of bounds, you can't do that. So then, so when I said he was there for a second or two, maybe it was like 3 or 4 seconds. I really, time just gets away when you're in a game, but I just took it as a warning, and I did it as a change of possession. And if it was a technical, they would have shot 2 baskets and had the ball on the side out of bounds. So my thought was, at the time, I'd give them a warning, I'll do a change of possession, and then I'll go talk to the coach, which is exactly what I did. But in the back of my mind, I kept saying, God, I've seen this before. It's like 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't remember the exact procedure that the guy I was reffing with did. Now, and it just kind of bugged me, which is why I sent you the message, Jared.
And trust me when I say this, you're not the first one to go with a warning and to just turn the ball over to the other team, because I've seen other officials have done that. I think I did it earlier as well, from a few years ago or many years ago, whatever. But you're not the first one to do that. So, live and learn. The next time So
Yeah, Roger. I won't make that mistake twice.
do we have any other questions? Do we have anything else? Oh, we got one.
We
in the chat
got
here.
one in the chat room about shot clock violations on who should signal. The primary official, if it's in C or T, if it's in the trails area and the shot goes up, you should be on the ball and determining whether the shot clock or the shot got off before the violation occurred. If not, then trail would signal it. If the ball is in the leads primary, they're not going to have a great look at the clock. So C and T help out with that, whichever one has the better look at it. But I think the initial violation, if it's in the trail or center's primary, they should take the violation signal. If it's in the leads and we have a double whistle for it, fine, but whoever has the best look at the play.
Thanks. I've had a few of these games here, and it's kind of funny because I know we're all new to this. At least I am, and we'd find all 3 of us would be making that indication, which we all looked at each other and go, that doesn't seem right. All 3 of us to do that. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, any thoughts? All right, what if not, a few reminders.
Hey, JB, before you
yep.
go, can I ask a question?
Yep.
I had something happen Friday night. We had blood on the floor. A kid got hit and got his hit.
You called me, then I never called you back. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I didn't like the way the coach cleaned it up. He didn't have gloves. They didn't have a kit. He had, I don't know what he had, if he had disinfectant wipes or something. We had blood twice on the court, and he came out with a wet wipe and opened it up and used his hand. And I kind of looked over him and I said, Coach, do you have a kit for that? And he said, no, I don't. And that was at Lyle. I'm just asking you, I didn't know if you wanted to, what is protocol on that? And I'm not going to, obviously we wanted to get it cleaned up and everything, but I didn't know if you wanted to give Bill a shout out or an email that maybe they should have a kit on hand, because he really should have been wearing gloves and he should have had a bag to put it in when he was done. And Andy and I, we all talked about it after the game and didn't think that was appropriate, but we didn't say nothing at the time.
Sure. Yeah, and I can reach out to Bill in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, if they have a trainer on site, Okay, the trainer's gonna take care of it. You know, they might have a custodian on site, they might take care of it, and then it becomes pretty wishy-washy if we don't have a trainer and if we don't have a custodian. Because now it's gonna fall on the site manager. And if the site manager is out selling popcorn, okay, now it's gonna come to the coach, and yeah, they should have gloves on. They should be better prepared. I'll just shoot a friendly email to Bill, and we'll get that
Okay.
going. I go down
appreciate
there on Tuesday night this week, so I can talk to him in person as well. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Don't shake hands with them afterward, Kevin.
What's that, MJ?
Don't be shaking hands with them afterward.
I'll remember that. Thank you.
Okay, and a couple of reminders. If you are making application to the Minnesota State High School League State Tournament, that application process needs to be done tonight. The deadline is tonight. So if you haven't done that, yeah, please do so. If you're looking to make application, and then also Wednesday night, MJ, there's a mid-season check-in Zoom meeting. Is that correct? That Jason Nickleby is going to lead?
On Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Yep. I believe that there's been a Zoom link that has been sent out. If you didn't get it or if you deleted it, let me know because I can kick it back out. The schedule, I'm busy working on a whole bunch of assignments trying to get January all out tomorrow. It's been an absolute grind, folks, because we're so short on officials, as you all know, because we're working a lot of basketball games. I thank everyone for their effort, for their commitments, for the driving, for working probably a couple more days per week than you really want to work. I know I'm on myself, I've been working more. So if I'm working more, then I'm not on Arbiter, and that's a bad thing for all of us as well. So hang in there. The weather has been working for us. We got a lot of basketball played. We still have a lot to go. We do have a couple of injuries that are starting to pile us up a little bit, so that's not helping. And I'm constantly working with the schools trying to move a game here or there. So I will send out a sort of a scheduling update tomorrow at some point in time, and we'll go from there. But yeah, keep Arbiter up, and I thank you kindly for all your work. Eric, do you have anything?
No, someone asked about the clips tonight because they were kind of hard to see on the other side from my computer. I will see if I can get something done with Tim Nicometto to share some of the clips we used tonight, and then some of the ones I had that we didn't get to. But yeah, just if you think so people are being unruly and you're unappreciated, just know there's a lot of people that appreciate what we're doing out there, and keep letting us know. And if you need to do an incident report, so that gives our ADs some ammo to use against our less appreciative fans, please do so. The ADs need our help on that end as well if they're going to have any way to make a change. So
Use your tools that communicate. If you have to warn, you warn. If you have to whack, you whack, and we keep control of the situation in the games. So, well, MJ, would anything from your seat?
No, I was just gonna say, stay healthy and, pace yourself, folks. That's the other thing that's important to do. But on the flip side, I'll reiterate what Eric just said. There are a lot of people, I've talked with a bunch of people kind of maybe over the break, but there are a lot of people that really do appreciate what we do and appreciate the fact that we provide the opportunities for their athletes, their kids to play. So there's always a knothead here and there, but there's more people out there for that one knothead. There's 50 people sitting around them saying, thanks for coming out tonight. So keep that in mind as well. So thanks for joining in. It's what we do to all get better, and we all make mistakes all the time. And as we try to narrow down our bandwidth, that's what it takes, is just a little more education. So thanks again.
All right, folks, have a good night. Have a great week. We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.